guys, Sharon here from School Corridor, and like I promised, we're going to speak about physical resource management tonight. And so hopefully I'll be able to give you some information and you'll be able to participate as well. So I just want to talk about the management of physical resources at the school and remind ourselves that that is one of the key responsibilities of the principal. You'll see that under the principal's responsibilities in the job description of your principal. You'll see it under the administrative section, right? You'll see the principal must manage the physical resources at the school. And then when we did the deputy principal's post, I don't know if you can recall, for those of you who watched, you'll see that the principal can delegate the management of the physical resources to the deputy principal. So the deputy principal can become the physical resources manager at the school, which means that the deputy principal will have to oversee all the physical resources at the school. Okay? The physical resources must be managed by the principal, but remember we have the SGB, your school governing body, and the school governing body must also oversee the physical resource management at the school. Okay, and if you look at the HOD job description, you'll see that the HODs are also responsible for developing a budget for their departments and for identifying the resources that are required for learning and teaching. So effectively, your entire SMT is involved in physical resource management. Okay, so I'm hoping you'll find it interesting. I'm just going to try to give an overview of the physical resource management module that I want to tackle here with you. And then hopefully we can have future sessions as well. Okay, I see Adrian has joined. I was just going to say now, hi Adrian, lovely to have you here. Adrian is sitting, goodness me, I don't know where, somewhere, I think it's Abu Dhabi. He's just left Florida Primary School and he's taken up a position at an international school. So Adrian, I hope you enjoy it. It was lovely chatting with you on Messenger again. Yeah, so just back to the focus of today, right? Like I said, it's about physical resource management. And when we talk about physical resource management, then we're obviously saying that you have existing physical resources at your school. Okay, so you will have actual physical resources, like you will have your buildings, your grounds, you will have computers at your school, you will have other equipment at the school, and you will have material resources as well. And that will include your learning and teaching material, like your textbooks and everything else. Okay, so that all sort of falls under that broad banner of physical resources. Now, you know, this is one area where I think that your SMT must have an understanding of how one, you know, budgets for physical resources, how you have to procure the physical resources, how you have to ensure that that those physical resources, whether they are physical or material, how they are managed, how they are cared for, and how they are used at the school. So you'll have to monitor and evaluate whether you're spending the money that you are using to buy the physical resources, whether you're spending that money effectively. Okay, so I thought I want to speak about that tonight. You know, I want to just share that the state provides funding, norms and standards for all public schools, right? And you also, according to the South African Schools Act, the SGB, has to also take reasonable measures to supplement that funding that is received from the state. So you get funding from the state, which we call norms and standards, and then schools have to raise their own funding via school fees, collection of school fees, or having fundraising efforts. And all that money will have to be spent primarily on educational purposes, right? The act is very clear about that. So that is what I want to speak about. Let me just greet who joined us here. Adrian, okay. Shelly, oh, you've arrived again. Thanks for joining us, Shelly. Shelly says, as always, hi, Sharon, hi again to you. And Adrian says, listening to you and still learning from you. Ah, man. And so am I learning from you. Thanks, Adrian. Lyndall joined. Thanks for joining, Lyndall. And Shireen Cookson joined as well. Thanks, Shireen. And then, of course, she's calling Tanya Dugson to get online. So that's quite interesting. Okay, so tonight's topic is about the management of physical resources, okay? And I thought just for I'm just trying to scroll. I think now Lyndall is the last one. Hi, Lyndall, I greeted you now. So what I want to talk about is that, you know, by law, the provincial education departments must inform the schools about their financial allocation. So every year, for example, the WCD will bring out a circular, right, about the projected funding that schools can expect from the education department. Now, I would imagine that is the same in the other provinces. So the latest one, if you go to the circulars and minutes, then you'll see the latest one. I don't think this one's this year's one is out already. Then you'll see, if you go to the WCED circular view here in the Western Cape and you go to the WCED circular 36 of 2018, then you'll find that circular speaks to the financial allocation of the norms and standards, okay? So you'll see, and usually the projection in those circulars will be for the next 3 years. So if you're a school leader, if you're part of the SMT or even a teacher, then it's very good to be reading these circulars, because you'll be seeing exactly how much money the state will be allocating per learner at your school, right? So that will give you an indication of the money that you're getting. So you can calculate based on the number of learners you have, and you use the amount that will be stipulated in the circular. Then you'll know exactly how much money you're getting from the state, right? And that, I think, is very important information. Our HODs and our deputy principals must also study the circular, right? So you need to know what funding you have at the school, or what funding you are receiving. Firstly, from the education department, and then, of course, if you are a fee-paying school, if you're teaching at the fee-paying school, then that means that you also collect school fees. So you need to know how much money or funding you get from the school fees. And then, of course, you also need to know whether you're doing fundraising and, you know, whether you're getting other monies in, because all that will be in your finances, and of course that will help you to determine how to develop your budget. Okay, so when we speak about physical resource management, it's inevitable that we speak about financial management as well, and that is sort of the focus for tonight. Okay, thanks Beverly for joining again. Beverly, lovely to have you here. And then Potion, thanks for coming on board. And then, of course, Nicole is also here. Nikki, Lynn, Frank. Thanks, Nikki, for coming. Okay, so you can tell me, once I've just given you some information, what, if you have questions, you can ask it. But I thought, let me just focus on what that circular stipulates, what it says, because if you study the circulars, you become more informed, and you'll know exactly how much, like I said, how much funding you get from the education department. Okay, so if you just look at I'm running 2 computers at the moment. I'm busy talking on this one, and I thought I'll take out my business computer as well and just pull up. So just let me see, and there, of course, it went off. So I actually saved the circular on this computer that I'm trying to access now. You see, this is so nice when you're sitting with me in my house and we're having this chat. So let me just see quickly. Okay, here it is, almost. Yeah. So if you go to that circular, right? Circular 36 of 2018. So those of you who are in the Western Cape, you can actually go onto the WCED circular minutes. I'll go onto the website and then you go to the minutes and circular section, to that tab. And then if you go to the circulars of 2018, look for circular 36 of 2018. And that's the one I'm talking to now. So every year, like I said, the education departments are obligated to let schools know how much funding the schools will be receiving. And here in the Western Cape, you'll see there will be a projection for 3 years, and that will also be in the circular. Okay. The other nice feature about this, this funding, you can also access it on CMAS. So hopefully you all know what CMAS is. CMAS is the acronym. It's the abbreviation for, I hope I'm right here, Central Education Management Information System. So it's a management system where you'll find all the information about your learners, and that is where you also upload your learner results per quarter, and you get all the administration that the department wants to share with you under the administration tab. Okay, let me just digress for a moment. I'm aware that many of our SMT members don't even have access to CMAS. Now that, in my view, can hamstring your SMT members. You're limiting them from having access and really helping you to run the school more effectively and more efficiently. So if, CMAS allows you to have your own, you can have your own password. You don't need to share the password that the school has. You can have your own password to access the system. And so you can go in there and go and have a look at, like I said, the circular and the allocation that you get per learner. And in that way, you can equip yourself. So I think if you don't have access to CMAS, if you're an SMT member, then perhaps that is something that, SMTs must discuss. You can always determine the level of access that somebody has, but you're really tying people's hands if you don't give people access to critical, information that will help your SMT perform at a much higher level, if I can put it like that. Okay, so you can find this on CMAS as well, and then that circular will also explain to you how to get into, where to find the information. Okay, so in that circular, if you study that circular, it will tell you exactly. I'm just going to run through it quickly. Sorry that I'm giving you my side or my back at this point, but you will also be told how to allocate and how to use that funding. Okay, so there's a breakdown, and that breakdown is also provided in the circular. So it's highly recommended, for example, how you need to allocate the funding that you get from the department. Now, before I go to that allocation, let me just go to that table that also appears in the circular. Let me just see, it should be here, unless I'm going, yes. You'll find there's the national table of targets for the school allocation, right? And then you'll find in this circular that I'm talking about, circular 36 of 2018, you'll find that you'll get the projected allocation for 2019, 2020, and 2021. Now, that's good information. So you don't have to, you will know how much money you're getting from the education department. So you can be proactive and then project how much funding you need, how you're going to raise the money you need, what you're going to do. So this helps schools to organize themselves better. Let's take a no-fee paying school. In 2019, the no-fee paying schools received 1,390 Rand per learner. So multiply that by the number of learners you have, and you'll know exactly how much funding you're getting or how much funding you received. Okay. Now, this particular circular that I'm talking about is for Section 21 schools. Now, hopefully, let me just explain quickly. Your Section 21 schools are the ones who manage their finances independently. In other words, the department will deposit the money into your account, and you will then be able to manage your money yourselves. Okay. A Section 20 school, the allocation that you get will be what they call a paper allocation. You will know exactly how much money you're getting, but the education department will administer that money for you. Okay, so if you go onto the WCED Circular and Minutes tab on the website there, then if you're a Section 20 school, then you can look for the circular that applies to the Section 20 schools. But you'll get more or less the same information, right? So back to the allocation. So in 2019, like I said, the schools, no-fee paying schools would have received 1,390 per learner. And then for 2020, you get the provisional projection of 1,468. You see? So for next year, when you guys sit with your budget now, usually schools work on their budgets, and the SGBs will then start developing the budget for the new financial year for 2020. If you're a no-fee paying school, you already know how much you're getting. So you know it's 1,468 that you're getting for 2020, for the financial year 2020. And you also have a projection there for 2021. Okay, so you can look at that table in the circular and then look at what quintile your school falls under, and you can check what is your financial allocation per learner, and that information will help. I hope that is useful. Nicole, let me see. Okay, Walter also joined. Hello, Walter. Thanks for coming again. I've got Parikila here, my community's right here with me. Taxi joined. Taxi, lovely to have you here. Where were you on women? When we spoke about women, you just gave us a wide berth, right? Very wide berth. And then, of course, Keith Nika joined. Thanks, Keith. You finally made it. Hello. And then, of course, Manal Lakay is speaking to Adrian. Okay. So let me know if this, if this is helping. The idea is to help us grow, be inspired, and empowered. Okay. So back to the allocation. So the circular, I'm sort of trying to just stick to the circular story here. The use of the allocation. Now, I mentioned you get all this information in the circular, right? So the allocation, what do you have to do? How do you have to split up the funding percentage-wise? And you'll see that there are 4 categories, right? You have to, for example, the first one is that you must spend of the money that the state gives you. You need to spend 30% to purchase LTSM. So that's your learning and teaching support material. Okay. But if you read the circular, and this is what a lot of schools miss, is that you must spend 30% of that money on purchasing learning and teaching support material. And of that 30%, you must allocate 10% and purchase library material. Okay, that's something that schools don't really pay attention to. Okay, so sometimes you'll find that schools, if you want to deviate from those recommended allocations, then your SGP will have to then submit a letter to the department, and then the department will have to approve if you deviate, right? So there are many schools that will say they have enough learning and teaching support material. And many schools just see the learning and support material as the textbooks, okay? Now, learning and support material, if you go even in that circular, you'll see that there's a whole, the range of learning and support materials that you can purchase. It goes beyond just textbooks, right? And there's a lot of emphasis today on e-learning, and you have learning support materials in the form of books, library books, readers that you need for your learners, and it's very clear in the circular that you need to spend at least 10%. If you don't have a minimum, listen to this, if you don't have a minimum of 10 books per learner, okay, once you have 10 books, reading books per learner, then of course the department will be more favorable in terms of allowing you to shift the percentages or change the percentages and allocate a higher allocation to one of the other sections. Okay, so 30% must be spent on a learning and teaching support material, and then you need to spend 20% on local purchases. That will include all kinds of things like office supplies and so forth, and then 25% must be allocated for municipal services. And the municipal services, you know that you have to cover your municipal services, right? And if you read in that circular, you'll see that in this WCED circular, you'll see that that it's very clear that if you do not service your municipal accounts, then the education department has the right to withhold some of your funding and then pay that money over. Okay, so just be aware of that. So you need to spend 25% on municipal services and of course 25% on maintenance. Okay, so the allocation is very clear there. Now I think it's important. I'm sure many principals know this. I'm going to put my foot in here and say there are many deputy principals, especially the ones that I engage at schools and even at the training center, that don't really know the details of the circular. Okay, so it's a good thing if you study it. Yep, let's see. Anybody who's making a comment or you're just listening to me now at this point, Patrick Trezant joined. Patrick, thanks so much for joining, and my condolences for your best friend Kelly's son that passed on, but we'll speak again. Thanks for being here. Thanks, Janita. Thanks, Chilo. Gail V. Johannes is here. And Andre Lamprecht is here. And my friend Boot is here. And the other. Oh, word. Nice. Okay, so let me know. I'm going to roll on with some information, and then you let me know if I'm, if this is making sense and if it's helping. My main point for those of you who joined us is that we're talking about physical resource management. We're just starting that conversation, and I'm saying that when you deal with the management of physical resources, you need to also understand financial management, because you need funding to either maintain the current physical resources that you have or the ones that you still want to procure. Okay, and I've been saying that all education departments here in South Africa must inform schools of the financial allocation of the norms and standards that they will receive for the following financial year. And if you're here in the Western Cape, you'll find that every year a circular will be issued to give you the norms and standards, the funding allocation that you can expect. And usually in that circular, you'll get a projection for 3 years. And I'm using the circular 36 of 2018 to sort of just be our basis for discussion this evening. Okay? Yes, and then I also mentioned, I also mentioned that the same information is found on CMAS, and I'm advocating that schools revisit the permission levels and the authority that they give the SMTs in terms of accessing this information, because the more information your SMT has, the better they'll be more informed, and they'll really be able to help you manage your school more effectively, because the information is out there and they can go and read and you can discuss it. Okay. then as an aside, if an S&T has never done what we're doing here tonight, then I would even advise you as your SMT, to sit and look at the next circular that comes. Even look at this circular, because there is a projection of the financial allocation, the norms and standards that you will receive for 2020 and for 2021. And then engage the SGB or have one of those sessions with the SGB. It is the responsibility of the principal to help the SGB members to develop. And I think this is a wonderful opportunity. It's a wonderful way of starting that development process as well with your SGB. Let him understand how to mediate the circular, how to understand it and so forth, and even with your SMT. Okay, so that is under the any questions? Okay, let's see. Mauritia says, hello Sharon, I'm very, very important. Of course you are important. If you're here, you are important. Miss Shay. Hi Miss Shay, our new principal. Faye, hello Faye. Lovely to have you here. Faye is our principal in the Mitchells Plain area. Principal of Ella Junior. Thanks for joining. And Elaine or Eileen Bucas also joined. Hi Eileen. Okay, so now you can ask me questions. I thought, let me just underscore that, because if you don't read that circular, I'm saying you're shortchanging yourself, okay? Because it means that the information is available, and if you want to really up your game as a school leader, then you need to understand the norms and standards framework in which we're operating and the kinds of allocations that the department provides for each school. Okay. Yes. Where shall I go with this now? If we talk about the management of physical resources, and I think I mentioned this, you have to look at, how do you procure the goods. So you need to know something about the procurement system, this procurement processes. And you also have to look at, when we talk about the management of physical resources, you have to know how to monitor the usage and how to determine the usage. So you need to know something about project management. You need to know how do you audit what you currently have and what you need in the future and what the needs are. Then you also need to know what are the objectives, what are the objectives of the school, because that will also help determine what physical resources you need. And then of course there's the maintenance. Okay, if I just talk about the maintenance, maintenance refers to the maintenance of your school building, the grounds, the maintenance of your equipment that you have, physical and material. Okay, so let's take textbooks for example. We have situations where schools have to procure large amounts of textbooks every single year, right? So there's usually a problem in terms of the retrieval of those textbooks, the care of the textbooks. And I know here in the Western Cape there's a whole drive. In fact, schools are under instruction, compelled to make sure that there's a textbook policy in place and that the textbook management system is intact at the school. Because if you're spending money every year to purchase the same textbooks, then definitely there's evidence of negligence, there's evidence of wastage. That means that there's no real proper control over your assets that you have at the school. Okay. Yes. Anything else? Because I don't want to go into the whole procurement thing. Is there any? Okay, you can ask me questions now. So when you do the physical resource management, like I said, you need to know something about the financial management, because you need to know what funds are going to be allocated. You need to know whether the monies are going to be spent wisely, whether there's, you're going to have to prevent a wastage. You're going to have to prevent fraud. In other words, you're going to have to also protect whatever assets you purchase, and the current assets that you have, you're going to have to ensure that you maintain it, because that is part of your responsibility. Okay, I may be repeating myself here. So, yeah, guide me. Otherwise, this conversation is going to run dry. What would you like me to say? What would you like us to speak about? I thought I'll reserve the discussion on the procurement of physical resource management. I'll reserve that, and also reserve the discussion of the identification of resources that you need, and not put all that stuff in here. I just wanted to just highlight that there's definitely information out there. Nobody needs to be ignorant about how much funding you're getting from the department, and how much and how you can budget, and how you can develop your budget so that you spend your money wisely. Okay, and then the fact that the SGPs are required to, within reason, raise funds as well to supplement it. I think perhaps what I can tell you is that allocation, the funding that we get, there are exclusions, right? The exclusions, what you can't spend that norms and standards on. You can't, for example, pay employees, SGB employees, from with that norms and standards money. That would be illegal for you to do. And when we talk about SGB employees, we're not only talking about teachers, security staff that you're employing. You may be employing staff to help you with the main, general assistance. You may not pay anybody from that money. Okay, you may use your own funds, the money that you have raised. So that money you may have received donations. You may be getting that money in via your school fees. You may be getting money from other sources. That money you may use to cover salary expenses. But the law is very clear. You must first use the money, your own income. You must use that first to ensure that you are covering all those areas that I mentioned. Okay, so you must first ensure that all the educational needs are met, and that there's enough finances to cover all the educational needs and purposes at the school. Then you can allocate your own funding, your own money, your own income. Then you can use that for salary purposes. Okay, you may not also use the norms and standards to maintain hostels for those schools that have hostels. And you may not use that money to give people loans. Okay, so you may not give loans to your staff. You may not even give loans to other people. So those are the exclusions. And if you do break the law, then of course there will be serious repercussions because of that. Okay, right. Let's see. Jonathan. Hi, Jonathan. Hello. Nice to have you here. And then, of course, Ashley's here. Very appropriate, says Ashley, as we close to moving to a new building at Princeton. Hi, time to dispose of goods as well. Yes, Ashley. Listen, congratulations. Yes, I'm going to come and visit the school once you're in your new building. There's policy about the disposal of goods as well, which we can touch on, but not for tonight's session. Tonight's session is just about, Michelle is also asking about asset disposal. Can we reserve that conversation for next week? But basically, Michelle and Ashley, you must have a disposal policy that can be part of your financial policy. And that is what your SGP must write up. So there are different, prescriptions around how to dispose of goods that are irreparable or and so forth. Okay, so we'll touch that in more detail. Let me just do some reading. But generally, there must be a disposal committee as well. and the SGB must establish that committee, and there must be guidelines as to how to go about the disposal. Okay. Shamila Solomon, good. Shamila, so lovely to have you here. Thanks for joining us. The lady who's teaching at, oh my goodness, the school is on the tip of my tongue here, but I call you. And Theo joined. I think I've got all my students here on the chat. Lovely to have you here. Say something to me. Okay. Booty also asked, I still need to know the process of procurement. Could you perhaps assist Sharon? Yes, now the procurement, Booty, that is also a, there's definitely a process that you must follow. For example, you need at least 3 quotations, and you need to know, if we talk just in terms of what we need, you first need to do an assessment of what you need, you have to do a needs analysis, for example, and then once you've done that, you need to know who the suppliers are that you're going to approach. Then you need to have at least 3 quotations. And then, so there must be an open tendering process that takes place, which of course should be sort of controlled by your governing body as well. And then you will choose the best service provider, not only based on price, but also based on quality, because you have to do your reference checks and so forth. So there's a whole protocol about, around procurement as well. So I hope this sort of helps now, Booty, for this. I'm rather saying your surname because I'm going to get lost in your clan name there. Okay. So let me know if that helps. And then, is there anybody else who's asking a question? Oh, not really. I'm talking to myself, I think. Okay. So yeah. So we can talk about procurement in more detail, and I can actually do some research and look for actual information. The disposal committee, like I said, you must have a disposal committee, and that must be established by your governing body. And then I think, let me just pick up on Jonathan's question. Jonathan, you're asking, is procurement and SGB function, and where does the FinCom fit in? Jonathan, your SGB is mandated to, they're responsible for the finances, right? So usually if the SGB doesn't have anybody competent on there, they may co-opt somebody to run the finance. They may, appoint somebody to do the finances for them. And so procurement is one of those subsections of finance. So that will also fall under the SGB's mandate. But usually your finance committee, that will be a delegated subcommittee delegated by the SGB, and you will have teachers serving on there, and if your parents, obviously your parents will be on there as well. But essentially it's an SGB function, but usually the SGB will delegate that responsibility to the principal and the finance committee at the school. And then the finance committee is accountable to the SGB. So when the SGB has a meeting, the finance head, whoever's been appointed there, will have to report back to the SGB. Okay? I hope that helps, Jonathan. Then Michelle says, cheaper isn't always better, quality is important. I agree. So that becomes important, the quality, yeah. The other important point that I want to make is, remember, schools always, I think there are quite a few schools that overlook this. When you appoint someone, when somebody has a delegated responsibility, say for example, the person is the physical resources manager, then that person must be in writing, and the person needs to sign to accept that responsibility. Okay, so even if it's in the SMT member's job description, and even if you assign that to somebody, you must still have a letter there to state that is the designated person and that person takes responsibility. That's very important, because the person can then be held legally responsible, but the person can challenge you and say that you just said I must be the head of the of, the head of physical resources at the school, but I have nothing in writing. So everybody who is assigned a responsibility must be given that in writing, and the person must then sign. Okay? Somebody's your textbook coordinator, that person must be given that duty in writing as well. And then that letter must be on file. Okay, I think that is important that I need to mention. Okay, so Leah Hoffman says, hi, Shaz. Hi, Lee. Lovely to have you. I've got union people on here to listening to me. So let us hear that Sharon is talking sense to that. Thanks, Lee, for coming on. Okay, and then Jonathan says, thank you. Okay, thanks, Jonathan. So look, so in a nutshell, like I said, if you do the physical, I'm busy wrapping up because I think you're just listening to me tonight and probably just, digesting what I'm saying. So the one thing is we're just starting the conversation about physical resources management, and I can see there's an interest in knowing about disposal committees, about procurement. So I'll pick up on that, one of those topics for next week around physical resource management. I mentioned that if you do the physical resource management, it is a function, it is a responsibility of the principal, but it can also be a delegated responsibility to the deputy principal. Then I mentioned that every HOD, remember, if you look at your job description, you are required to draw up a budget for your department to indicate what resources you need to advance the learning and teaching in your department. So essentially, all SMT members are involved in physical resource management. You need to have in writing, if you've been appointed as the physical resource manager at the school, that must be done in writing. That's important. Then I mentioned that your education department is required by law to indicate what your financial allocation is. We refer to that as the norms and standards. Okay. I reference then the WCD circular, the latest circular, that is number 36 of 2018. And I said that circular will give you all the information that you really need about what financial allocation you have received for 2019, and there will be a projected allocation for 2020 and 2021. Okay. Then I also mentioned that there will be a recommended split of that allocation, that you have to buy LTSM, that will be 30%, that you need to, of that 30%, you need to spend 10% on library material, and you may only really deviate from that once you have your 10 books per learner at the school, or if your SGB request that via the department and the department approves, then you may deviate from the 30%. Okay, and then of course there's the 20% municipal services that you must pay towards your municipal services. You are compelled to pay your municipal services. If you don't service your municipal accounts, the education department can withhold from your allocation and then service and pay that towards your municipal account, right? Then 25% of that money is then reserved for local purchases and 25% for maintenance, day-to-day maintenance. What I failed to mention is that if you have serious maintenance issues or emergency maintenance, then you can check in that circular. There's a certain process that you must follow. Okay, and then what else did I mention? Let me just check if I've covered everything I wanted to cover. Yes, I think that's the wrap. That is it. And then of course, like I said, I will pick up on different parts. You must just guide me and tell me what it is. Okay. Jonathan says accountability, yes, but very little training to new SMT members to perform various functions such as procurement, safety, etc. Just a comment. Thank you, Jonathan. Jonathan, thank you for keeping the conversation alive. To the others, thanks for being with me here. But I would have loved you to give some comments as well. Okay, but it's not a problem. Jonathan, you're right. New SMT members must be trained, but look at my daughter. You know, this family's crazy. Your SMT, we're touching on, you must be engaged in professional development all the time, and you must try and do capacity building. So you need to empower the SMT. The principal has the responsibility to ensure that the senior management team at the school is equipped, has the skills and the competence to do the job and the various functions, the various jobs at the school. And if there are gaps, that those gaps be addressed. So I hear what you're saying. That is why I suggested right at the beginning that SMTs, you don't have to just meet to discuss, what you're going to do the next term only. We're going to do this, that, and the other on a weekly basis. That is sort of just like maintenance work that you're doing. Okay? So you're doing, you need to do professional development. You need to do training like this. So this is an ideal opportunity, when a circular comes out like this. This is an opportunity to instill people, talk about, say, this is the circular, and then mediate the circular as a group. There are training courses that you can go on, but I'm saying you can learn on the job. That's how I learned when I was at school, studying the circulars. And so SMTs can actually sit and study the circulars. So I'm challenging the heads out there. We must always try to empower people, try to get people to sharpen their skills, give them, help them to find information. And the circulars are a good starting point. And let people learn together. Even I think it's important. So Jonathan, I would suggest that you do that, and then try not to just to collapse all those gaps that you think you have and others have, or that the SMT has. Zoom in on one. For example, zoom in on norms and standards allocations, and norms and standard allocation that you receive, and then focus on this circular like I did tonight, and just make sure that people understand that. Then people can digest it, and you say, right, next time we're going to do safety, and then you can pull, all the circular on safety, or you can look at the Occupational Health and Safety Act, things like that. Okay, so let me see. Michelle says, thanks, Sharon, you are really answering many of my concerns. Thanks for that, Michelle. And then Mauricia says, I like what Jonathan said, training for new SMT members. Yeah. Mauricia, yes, but I hope you heard my response to Jonathan as well, that responsibility for our own development. And if the principal is not, if the principal is not thinking about it, that we actually, even use my the live stream as a prompter, and and chat about it. I think that is important. Otherwise, we're just going to blame other people. We're not victims. If we're a senior management member, if we belong to the senior leadership team at the school, we need to take responsibility for our own empowerment, for our own upskilling. We can't always just blame everybody out. Okay. And then Nadia joined. Nadia, you're joining now while I'm busy summarizing. Okay, so that's a wrap, guys. So let me know. I didn't see any suggestions here of what we can tackle next week. And I'm sure, yes, thanks for joining, and thanks for sticking around, because that means that you're finding some value in this. And remember what I said, Lee, you can vouch for this. You may record this as professional development under your first category for CPDD, right? Because this is, you're watching a live stream, and you're learning, and it's your time, you're learning in your time, and you're helping yourself. So I'm very proud of the guys who join these sessions. Okay, so let me commit for next week. I think we can touch on procurement, and we can touch on we can touch on all the theoretical framework of how to go about procurement issues, and then we can also touch on issues like the disposal committee, Okay, and then I'll see if I can get some references as well. So on that note, I know my thing is going like this, yeah, it's messing up again. But thanks for coming on board. Thanks for helping me to also be inspired and empowered. And let's continue learning like this. I enjoy it, and I'm sure you join it because you love it as well. So thanks for being here. Enjoy the rest of the week, and don't forget, put your NTA nomination in there because it's closing on Friday. But maybe I should do a Facebook Live just on the NTA. So go well, keep well, enjoy working in your schools, and remember, we're here to grow and we're here to inspire and empower each other. So on that note, I want to say good night. Cheerio.